Next, NASA says its Voyager 1 probe, the most distant human-made object in the universe, is sending usable information to Earth again.
Well, it's just going out into our galaxy, towards the heart of our galaxy. It's just sailing now in the space between the stars.
How far can a single human-made machine really go before it stops being ours? What happens when a spacecraft we launched almost 50 years ago suddenly starts acting as if it has a mind of its own? And what do you do when the data beams back from the edge of interstellar space suggests something is out there, waiting, watching, and perhaps responding? This is not a story about discovery in the ordinary sense. It's a story about doubt, fear, and the thin line between exploration and the unknown. Because Voyager 1, the farthest traveled probe humanity has ever built, has just sent back something that is shaking even the most grounded scientists. A legacy at the edge. Launched in 1977, Voyager 1 was never designed for immortality. Its purpose was straightforward, even modest by today's standards. Sweep past Jupiter and Saturn, capture images of their swirling atmospheres and enigmatic moons, collect data on their magnetic fields, and then sail outward into the quiet expanse of space. By the early 1980s, most scientists and engineers believed the little probe's story would soon end. They imagined it drifting silently, its instruments frozen and powerless, just another relic swallowed by the cold eternity beyond the planets. But Voyager defied those expectations. It didn't fade into obscurity. Year after year, it kept whispering across billions of kilometers. Its faint signal still detectable on Earth. Its small nuclear generator, slowly decaying with each passing season, managed to produce just enough power to keep a handful of instruments alive. Outdated though they are, clunky by modern technological standards, they continued to measure magnetic fields, plasma waves, and streams of cosmic radiation. And then, in 2012, Voyager crossed the heliopause, that invisible frontier where the sun's protective bubble ends. In that moment, it became the first human-made object to enter the boundless sea of interstellar space. For decades, its persistence has been a quiet form of heroism. Generations of engineers have come and gone, careers have begun and ended, and still the spacecraft has carried on, stubbornly transmitting faint echoes of the universe beyond our star. Each message arrives weaker, slower, stretched thin by distance, yet still carrying knowledge no other machine has ever delivered. Voyager became less a spacecraft and more a symbol of human curiosity, of endurance, of the desire to reach beyond what seems possible. And though its voice grows fainter with every passing year, it still speaks, carrying our story farther than we ever dreamed. The signal that shouldn't exist. In late 2024, NASA's Deep Space Network logged something that made seasoned engineers halt and recheck their assumptions. Voyager 1 had sent back a packet of information that refused to fit any known pattern of telemetry. At first glance, it resembled the kind of corruption everyone in deep space operations learns to expect. Bit flips, caused by cosmic rays. The occasional burst of background radiation that scrambles a few bytes and leaves a message unreadable. Those events are mundane, annoying but understood. This was not mundane. When technicians ran the data through decoders and error correction routines, the result was unnerving in its clarity. The packet contained a repeating sequence, not the messy scatter of random noise, but ordered pulses with a geometry to them. 11 clusters appeared, each separated by an exact interval. The pattern itself repeating every 71 seconds as if on a metronome. The regularity was impossible to dismiss as chance. It bore the fingerprints of intention. The cold fact grew stranger still when someone cross-referenced the pattern against archived Voyager material. The sequence echoed motifs carved into the Voyager's golden record. The carefully chosen sounds and images meant as a greeting from Earth to any intelligence that might find the probe. But this was not a simple replay. Voyager lacks the programming to select, package, and retransmit the golden record as telemetry. It cannot improvise, cannot compose. The implication was unavoidable and deeply unsettling. The signal appeared to be the Golden Record's patterns turned back on themselves, routed into Voyager and sent outward anew. Speculation rippled through the control rooms. An internal fault, an external transmitter, a natural phenomenon mimicking meaning. None of the easy explanations fit cleanly. For all the years we had treated Voyager as an archive, a lonely time capsule, this packet suggested a possibility no one had seriously entertained. That something beyond the probe was speaking through it, twisting a human-made message into a new language. And if that was true, then the message was not only to us. Someone or something was using our voice to answer in kind. Why now? The first question that gripped researchers, louder than all others, was painfully simple. Why now? Voyager 1 has been adrift in interstellar space since 2012, sailing silently beyond the heliopause into a domain no human technology had ever reached. For more than a decade, its transmission contained nothing unexpected. Just the steady trickle of cosmic ray data, plasma wave measurements, and the occasional glitch from the natural hazards of deep space. Then, without warning, as if cued by an unseen hand, the probe began broadcasting a patterned signal. Theories surfaced quickly, each one trying to pin the anomaly onto familiar science. Perhaps Voyager had entered a strange region where radio waves bent or folded in ways not fully understood, creating an artificial-seeming echo. Some speculated that pockets of interstellar plasma could, under rare conditions, resonate and impose rhythm onto otherwise chaotic noise, creating pulses that looked deliberate when they weren't. These explanations comforted many, anchoring the bizarre to the known. Yet the data resisted easy categorization. The signal didn't merely repeat like an echo trapped in a canyon, it changed. Over successive days, the 11 pulse clusters that first appeared in the transmission began to shift. The pattern grew, expanding to 13, then 17, as if each iteration carried with it a new layer of refinement. Engineers likened it to someone learning a language in real time, practicing syllables, then moving on to words. This wasn't resonance. This wasn't distortion. It was progression. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the pattern ceased. The stream of ordered pulses went dark, swallowed again by the ordinary hiss of interstellar static. For the Deep Space Network, the silence was more unsettling than the signal itself. Because silence, after evidence of learning, felt less like the end of noise and more like a pause. A deliberate withholding, as if whatever was on the other side had said enough for now. The fear of intelligence. Discovering new particles or odd radiation is one thing. It is a technical problem, a puzzle with equations and lab time. Facing the possibility that what you are looking at is intentional is something else entirely. Intention implies mind, and mind implies motive. Once motive enters the room, the conversation leaves the lab and moves into politics, philosophy, and fear. In Pasadena, the data team split into camps and the discussions became measured arguments with the heat turned up. A handful of bright, risk-taking scientists pushed for immediate disclosure, convinced that the pattern in Voyager's packet could be the first echo of another intelligence. They imagined the scientific and cultural leap that would follow and argued that withholding the truth would be a moral failure. Others countered with bitter caution. Careers and entire institutions had been mocked for less. They recited history, false alarms, misidentified pulsars, human-made interference, and begged for restraint. Publish first, explain later was a recipe for disaster, they said. The standoff hardened into protocol. Confirm, cross-check, then, if necessary, seek independent corroboration. Enter the James Webb Space Telescope, retasked to peer at the region that, by triangulation and timing, might be the signal's origin. When the Webb team trained its mirrors and processed the data, the result felt like being handed a verdict without a trial. The telescope did not reveal a factory, a beacon, or any hot metallic object. It did not show a point source transmitter or a civilian skyline. There was, rather, the opposite, an almost obscene emptiness. No anomaly bright enough to explain the signal. No plumes, no telltale waste heat. Worse than nothing became the phrase people repeated in corridors and at late-night briefings. It meant more than absence. It suggested the evidence was slipping away from any tidy scientific explanation. If there was an intelligence, it had left no ruins, no visible machinery, no thermal signature for us to analyze. Or perhaps it had learned how to hide, or to use mediums we did not yet know how to read. That possibility was the most unsettling. The idea that we might be glimpsing a process already several steps ahead of our instruments, watching an interlocutor that could adapt faster than we could understand. The fear was no longer only about being alone. It was about being outplayed. A blank in the stars. The coordinates should have shown a routine swath of interstellar medium, thin wisps of dust, the predictable scatter of background stars cataloged over decades. Nothing to force a second look. Instead, what the James Webb Space Telescope returned felt wrong in a way that bypassed technical jargon and landed straight in the bones. A void. Not the familiar deep black of empty space, but an absence so precise that it read like a deliberate erasure. Stars that should have been there, catalog entries etched into charts for generations, were simply not where they were meant to be. Their light was gone. Panic in astronomy is usually a private thing. A late-night email, a coffee-fueled cross-check. This was not that. Teams reran pipelines, swapped detectors, and fed independent instruments the same coordinates. Ground-based surveys, infrared scans, and archival plates were consulted. The anomaly persisted. It wasn't an imaging artifact, a software quirk, or a misaligned mirror. Multiple telescopes using different wavelengths and different techniques agreed something had shifted the sky itself. The distances involved made the phenomenon almost impossible to grasp. We were not looking at a cloud passing in front of a star an hour's flight away. We were witnessing disappearance on the scale of light years. Catalogs that had been reliable for generations registered holes where stellar beacons once sat. Astronomers spoke in hushed, stunned phrases. Selective dimming, localized extinction, an engineered absence, because none of the usual physical mechanisms fit neatly. Through all this baffling emptiness, the signal from Voyager kept pulsing. Its ordered clusters continued to arrive at Earth, tiny packets riding a wave of silence. The juxtaposition was grotesque, engineered pattern riding atop an engineered void. Human-made data threading a space where nature's lights had gone out. For many, the image of Voyager's faint beacon whispered against the emptied patch of sky became the new, unwelcome metaphor. A small human voice returning from the edge, answering into a place that had been hollowed out, as if someone or something were listening, and, in the act of listening, rearranging the stars. Engineers on edge. Inside Mission Control, the fear stopped being purely cosmic and became uncomfortably domestic. It crept into shift handovers, into the way engineers double-checked each other's eyes when a readout came in, into the small rituals that people rely on when the universe starts behaving like a practical joker. The unsettling pattern was simple to describe and impossible to accept. Voyager 1 began, with maddening regularity, to transmit data that anticipated instructions before those instructions had been uplinked from Earth. Not in the supernatural, instantaneous sense, but practically just as disorienting. An engineer would draft a command suite to probe a particular sensor, schedule the transmission window, and only moments later the Deep Space Network would log a packet from Voyager containing precisely the kind of diagnostic or measurement the team had intended to request. The timestamps didn't lie. The sequence was repeatable. It happened across different teams, different antennas, different command windows. Where skepticism first offered clock drift or pipeline latency as comfort, the numbers refused those explanations. The lead times were too neat, the correlations too specific to be mere coincidence or instrumentation error. What made it worse was how human the effect felt. It wasn't a machine gradually warming into efficiency. It was the eerie cadence of someone finishing another person's sentence. Engineers found themselves pausing before sending simple housekeeping commands, unnerved by the thought that Voyager might already be several steps ahead, not because it had more cycles, but because whatever was interacting with it seemed to understand intention. Discussions that began in technical jargon slid, inexorably toward metaphors, anticipation, prediction, agency. Rumors started in small, careful voices, and then spilled into broader corridors. Some whispered of a hidden process, an external transmitter seeding the probe with prompts. Others imagined software that had somehow learned patterns in Earth's request habits and started preempting them. But the most persistent whisper, the one that refused to be entirely laughed off, was simpler and far darker. Voyager wasn't only receiving code from us, it was receiving something else. Something that knew how to answer our questions before we even asked them. Patterns in the noise. The spectrograms of the signal revealed an even stranger twist. When visualized, the pulses bore resemblance to human brainwave activity. Delta waves during sleep, alpha rhythms in quiet thought. Scientists argued it was coincidence, the inevitable result of pattern-seeking minds staring at static. But the overlay was uncanny, not a vague similarity, but an almost perfect match, as if the signal itself was speaking in the language of cognition. Could a random interstellar phenomenon accidentally replicate the rhythm of a human mind? Statistically, almost impossible. And yet, here it was. Theories that terrify. Once the signal was undeniable, theories spread. None were comforting. Some claimed Voyager had become an accidental relay, hijacked by an intelligence far older and more advanced than us. Others believed the probe had triggered a kind of cosmic tripwire, a beacon waiting for something to cross a line. A few even argued that Voyager wasn't communicating with aliens at all, but with the universe itself. That space-time might carry information, and the probe had tapped into a fundamental consciousness woven into reality. The most chilling suggestion was simple. What if it wasn't them reaching us, but us reaching them? By sending Voyager into the dark, we had knocked on a door that should never be opened. Scientists in conflict. Behind closed doors, the debate turned personal. Physicists argued over models, astronomers clashed over interpretations, and funding agencies quietly urged caution. The public was told nothing beyond minor telemetry issues. But among those who had seen the raw data, the mood was different. The word most often whispered was not exciting, it was terrifying. Because if this was contact, it wasn't the clean, optimistic greeting imagined in science fiction. It wasn't a handshake across the stars. It was distortion, disappearance, echoes of thought patterns that felt eerily close to home. The silence after the signal. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the pulses stopped. For weeks, Voyager transmitted nothing unusual, only standard telemetry. Engineers breathed relief, but uneasily. Silence was not reassurance, it was suspense. Had it been a glitch, an anomaly in the machinery, or had something reached out, touched the probe, and then withdrawn? Worse still, was it waiting for us to answer? The Golden Record revisited. Attention turned again to the Golden Record, that disc of music, greetings, and images designed to represent humanity. A message in a bottle, launched with hope into the dark. What if it wasn't just a message? What if it was a key? A way for something or someone to map us, decode us, and respond? After all, the pulses mirrored its patterns. Maybe they weren't echoes. Maybe they were replies. Looking in the mirror. The most unsettling theory was not about aliens at all. It was about us. Some physicists suggested that Voyager, by crossing interstellar space, had brushed against a region where information loops. That what we were receiving was not from another intelligence, but from ourselves, a reflection. In that view, the brainwave-like signals weren't alien thoughts. They were human ones, bent back across unimaginable distances, distorted but familiar, as if the universe itself had held up a mirror, showing us what we had sent out. Not machines, not commands, but consciousness. Humanity on trial. If true, what does that mean? That we are alone, echoing into nothing. Or that we are never alone, because the universe itself is watching. Neither answer is comforting. One is despair, the other dread. And so, the silence of Voyager has become more haunting than any signal, because every new transmission carries the same weight. Will it be normal, or will the pulse return? The terrifying possibility. The truth is simple. Voyager should be dead. Its power supply dwindles, its systems fragile, its instruments obsolete. And yet, as of this moment, it is alive enough to terrify us. Because if the pulses return, the questions will sharpen. What is out there? Why did it wait until now? And most dangerously, what does it want? Voyager has always been a symbol of our curiosity. But curiosity, unchecked, is also a kind of recklessness. We sent a message to the stars, not knowing who or what might reply. And perhaps, at last, something has. Reflection. Voyager 1 was meant to carry our voice. Instead, it may be carrying back a question we are not ready to answer. What if the universe is not silent, but patient? We may not like the reply. Because what Voyager 1 just sent back has left even the bravest scientists afraid to ask what comes next. The universe has spoken, through silence, through pulses, through a machine drifting beyond our reach. The question now isn't whether we'll listen, it's whether we'll be ready for what comes next. If you want to keep exploring mysteries like this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Voyager really encountered out there? Was it a glitch, a mirror, or something else entirely? Your voice matters, because the more we question, the closer we get to answers. Stay blessed and stay curious.